I was standing in front of the bathroom mirror at work, adjusting my blazer and trying to calm my nerves when my phone buzzed. The message from my mother popped up. Marlo's getting married. Engagement party tonight at 7. Don't be late. My name is Alara, and that's how I found out my little sister was engaged, through a last-minute text message on what was supposed to be my big day. I'd spent the morning practicing my acceptance speech for my promotion to senior account manager. At 28, I was the youngest person to reach this position at Carson and Mills Marketing. My team had even planned a celebration for after the announcement. Alara? Everyone's waiting in the conference room. My colleague Rachel poked her head into the bathroom. You okay? Yeah, just. I showed her my phone. Wow, that's some timing. Rachel's reflection grimaced beside mine. Your sister really knows how to steal the spotlight, huh? I forced a smile. It's fine. I should be happy for her. But it wasn't fine. Nothing about Marlo's relationship with Oliver Grant had been fine for the past year. I'd seen how he subtly corrected her table manners at family dinners, how he always seemed to be helping her make better choices, his choices. Yet my parents were thrilled about their precious baby girl landing such a catch. The promotion ceremony went exactly as planned. I gave my speech, accepted congratulations, and smiled for photos while my mind raced with questions. Who was organizing this party? How long had they known? Why hadn't anyone told me? By 6:30, I was pulling up to my parents' house in my work clothes, having barely had time to touch up my makeup. Cars lined both sides of the street. Clearly, everyone else had gotten more notice than I had. My mother met me at the door, frowning at my outfit. Alara, couldn't you have changed? This is a special occasion. I came straight from work, Mom. I had my promotion ceremony today, remember? The one I told you about last week? Oh, right. She waved her hand dismissively. Well, come in. Marlo's been asking where you were. The house was packed with familiar faces, aunts, uncles, family friends, and Oliver's wealthy circle. In the center of it all stood Marlo, radiant in a pale blue dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, showing off a diamond ring that could have paid for a small car. Alara, she squealed when she saw me, rushing over to grab my hands. Isn't it amazing? Oliver proposed this morning at sunrise on the beach. It was so romantic. Behind her, Oliver appeared, sliding an arm around her waist. We wanted to celebrate right away, he said smoothly. Sorry for the short notice. Something in his tone made me pause. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes as he looked at me, and I noticed how his fingers pressed just a little too firmly into Marlo's side. Congratulations, I managed, watching as Marlo unconsciously adjusted her posture to match Oliver's preference for perfect poise. We're thinking a spring wedding, Marlo continued, but Oliver cut in. Actually, darling, we discussed winter would be better. More elegant. Oh, right, Marlo's smile flickered. Winter, of course. I felt my stomach twist. This was the pattern. Marlo suggesting, Oliver correcting, Marlo yielding. But no one else seemed to notice or care. My father appeared with champagne, beaming at the happy couple. To Marlo and Oliver. As everyone raised their glasses, Oliver's eyes met mine again. This time, there was something challenging in his gaze, as if daring me to say what I was thinking. He knew I saw through him, and he wanted me to know that it didn't matter. I lifted my glass with the others, but inside, something shifted. My sister might be blind to what was happening, but I wasn't. And unlike everyone else in this room, I wasn't going to stand by and watch Oliver Grant destroy her. The question was, how do you save someone who doesn't want to be saved? A week after the engagement party, my mother insisted on hosting a family dinner to discuss wedding plans. I almost declined. But something in my gut told me I needed to be there. That same instinct had me arriving 15 minutes early, just in time to catch an exchange I wasn't meant to hear. Really, darling, you should let me handle the guest list. Oliver's voice drifted from the kitchen. Your college friends might not quite fit the atmosphere we're going for. I paused in the hallway, my hands still on the front door handle. But Katie's been my best friend since freshman year, Marlo protested weakly. And she's lovely, but you have to think about appearances. My business partners will be there, And you want to make the right impression, don't you? The silence that followed made my skin crawl. I cleared my throat loudly and walked into the kitchen, pretending I'd just arrived. Marlo was standing at the counter, chopping vegetables with unusual intensity while Oliver lounged against the refrigerator, looking perfectly at ease. "Need any help?" I asked, watching Marlo's knife come down harder than necessary on an innocent carrot. "Everything's under control," Oliver answered for her. "Isn't it, sweetheart?" Marlo nodded without looking up. Our parents arrived moments later, my mother fussing over Oliver's choice of wine while my father retreated to his usual chair with the evening paper. The scene was so normal it felt surreal, like watching actors perform a play about a perfect family. So, my mother began once we were seated. Oliver's found the most wonderful wedding planner. "She did the Henderson wedding last year. You remember how gorgeous that was, Gordon?" My father mumbled something noncommittal from behind his wine glass. "Actually," Marlo spoke up, "I was thinking maybe something smaller might be nice. More intimate." Oliver's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Darling, we discussed this. A winter wedding at the Grand Plaza. Everything's practically arranged." "I know, but—" Marlo, my mother cut in. "Don't be difficult. Oliver knows what's best. And speaking of the Grand Plaza, Alara, did you hear they're looking for a new marketing team?" Oliver mentioned he could put in a word. "I just got promoted at my current job," I reminded her, gripping my knife a little tighter. "Remember?" "Oh, but this would be such an upgrade." "Oliver, tell her about their benefits package." I watched Oliver's practiced smile spread across his face. "I'd be happy to make some introductions. After all, we're going to be family soon. We should help each other succeed, shouldn't we?" The way he emphasized succeed made it clear what he really meant. Fall in line. "I'm doing fine on my own, thanks," I said, meeting his gaze directly. Something flickered behind his eyes, annoyance, maybe even anger, before his smooth mask slipped back into place. "Speaking of success," he turned to Marlo, "tell them about your decision, darling." Marlo pushed her food around her plate. "I'm taking a break from my graphic design work. Oliver thinks it would be better to focus on the wedding and other priorities." "You're quitting your job?" I couldn't keep the shock from my voice. Marlo had fought hard for her position at that design studio. "Taking a break," Oliver corrected firmly. "A wife in my position has certain social obligations to consider." "And what position is that exactly?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. My mother shot me a warning look, but I kept my eyes on Oliver. He dabbed his mouth with his napkin, taking his time before responding. "I only want what's best for Marlo. Someone has to think about her future, don't they?" The implication was clear. He thought she couldn't think for herself. "Marlo's perfectly capable," I started, but my father finally lowered his paper. "Let's not argue at dinner," he said quietly, and just like that, the subject was closed. Later, as Oliver helped my mother clear the plates, I caught Marlo's arm. "Are you sure about all this?" For a moment, something like doubt crossed her face. Then Oliver called her name from the kitchen, and whatever she'd been about to say vanished behind her practiced smile. "Everything's perfect," she insisted, but her voice trembled slightly. "Really, Alara. Everything's exactly how it should be." I watched her hurry to join Oliver and realized with growing certainty that nothing about this was how it should be. Not even close. The truth came out in the middle of Bergdorf's, of all places. My mother had dragged us there for wedding dress shopping, insisting I come along for sisterly support. I was hanging back, watching Marlo try on the fifth ivory masterpiece of the day when her credit card was declined. The saleswoman's practiced smile never wavered. "Perhaps another card?" Marlo's face flushed as she dug through her designer purse. "I don't understand. There must be some mistake." My mother stepped forward, already reaching for her own wallet, but I caught a glimpse of the statement Marlo had hastily stuffed back into her bag. The number at the bottom had way too many digits. "I've got this one," my mother announced, but I noticed how Marlo wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Later, while our mother was discussing alterations with the seamstress, I cornered Marlo in the fitting room. "How bad is it?" I asked quietly. She smoothed invisible wrinkles from the silk gown. It's nothing. Just a temporary thing with the card company. Marlo. Oliver's handling it, she snapped, then immediately softened her tone. He says I just need to learn better financial management. Once we're married, he'll take care of everything. Everything? I picked up her discarded purse, the receipt from earlier visible. Like he's taking care of the $30,000 you already owe? Her eyes widened. You went through my things? I saw the statement by accident. What happened? You don't understand, she said, fingers twisting in the expensive fabric. Oliver's world is different. There are expectations. The right clothes, the right accessories, the right everything. I needed to keep up. By maxing out your cards? Marlo, this isn't you. Since when do you care about? Since I found someone who actually believes in me. Her voice cracked. Oliver says I have potential. He sees something in me that. He sees someone he can control, I cut in. He's already got you quitting your job, cutting off your friends, and now you're in debt trying to be his perfect trophy wife? You're just jealous, Marlo hissed, but there were tears in her eyes. You've always been jealous that I found someone while you're still alone, focused on your precious career. Ladies? The saleswoman's voice floated through the curtain. Is everything all right? Fine, Marlo called back, wiping her eyes carefully. Everything's fine. But later, as we were leaving the store, I overheard Oliver on the phone outside. He'd arrived to pick up Marlo and hadn't noticed me approaching. Of course I know about the cards, he was saying to someone. It's perfect, actually. The more dependent she is, the easier this will be. Trust me, by the time we're married, she'll be completely. Oh, hold on. He spotted me and ended the call smoothly. Alara, how lovely to see you. How was the dress shopping? Interesting, I said, studying his face. Lots of revelations today. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes, but his smile never faltered. I hope you're not implying anything unfortunate. After all, we're going to be family soon. It would be a shame if something came between us. Before I could respond, Marlo burst out of the store and threw herself into his arms. Oliver, you didn't have to come all this way. Nonsense, darling. I'll always be here to take care of you. He kissed her forehead, eyes locked on mine over her head. That's what family does, isn't it? I watched them drive away, my sister chattering happily about wedding details while Oliver nodded indulgently. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Don't make waves, Alara. Marlo's happy. Let her have this. But I couldn't. Not after what I'd heard. Oliver wasn't just controlling Marlo. He was systematically isolating her, making her dependent on him. And now I had proof he was doing it deliberately. The question was, would anyone believe me if I told them? Or would I just become the jealous older sister trying to ruin her baby sister's happiness? I pulled out my phone again and opened my banking app. If I was going to fight Oliver Grant, I needed ammunition. And bank statements never lie. 3 days of digging through financial records had given me a migraine and a disturbing picture of Oliver Grant. His company's success was built on a pattern of hostile takeovers and questionable partnerships. But it wasn't until I found Katie's social media post that everything clicked. Katie, Marlo's supposedly distant best friend, had posted a photo from 6 months ago. It showed her and Marlo at lunch, and in the background, partially obscured but unmistakable, was Oliver. With another woman. I was downloading the image when Rachel appeared at my office door. Your sister's here. Marlo stood in the lobby, fidgeting with her engagement ring. She looked smaller somehow, wearing a conservative dress I didn't recognize. Can we talk? She asked. Somewhere private? I led her to the building's rooftop garden, where she immediately burst into tears. Oliver's lawyer sent over some papers. A prenup, but there's something wrong with it. I can barely understand half of it, and when I asked questions, Oliver said I was being difficult. Let me see. She pulled out a crumpled document. As I read, my stomach turned. The agreement wasn't just unfair, it was predatory. Marlo would forfeit all financial independence, with clauses buried in legal jargon that would leave her with nothing if they divorced. Have you shown this to Dad? I asked. Oliver says involving lawyers will just complicate things. He wants me to sign it tomorrow. She twisted the ring again. He says it's about trust. It's about control. I pulled up the photo on my phone. Just like this is. Marlo stared at the image, color draining from her face. That's from before we were serious. He said he'd ended things with her. When exactly did you start dating? February. I think. Everything happened so fast. This photo is from March. I zoomed in on the timestamp. And that woman? I found 3 other photos of them together from April. You've been investigating him? Her voice sharpened. Why can't you just be happy for me? Because he's lying to you. About everything. I thrust the prenup at her. Look at this clause here. It gives him control of any inheritance you receive. Did you know Mom and Dad updated their will last year? She shook her head slowly. And what about your credit cards? The ones he said he'd handle? Has he actually paid them off? He said he would. After the wedding. After you're legally bound to him and all your assets are under his control. Marlo stood abruptly, hugging herself. You don't understand. I love him. Do you? Or do you love who you thought he was? I have to go. She gathered her things with shaking hands. Oliver's expecting me for dinner with his partners. Marlo, wait. Just stay out of it, Alara. Please. I watched her hurry away, already typing on her phone, probably texting Oliver to reassure him. My own phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Careful where you dig, Miss Thompson. Some things are better left buried. I stared at the message, my pulse quickening. Oliver knew I was investigating him, which meant he was watching me too. Back in my office, I pulled up everything I'd found. The financial records, the photos, the prenup. My sister was walking into a trap, and I had proof. But proof wasn't enough. Marlo had to want to see the truth. Another message arrived. Family dinner tomorrow night. Oliver insists. Don't be late. This one was from my mother, but I could feel Oliver's influence behind the words. He was forcing a confrontation, confident he could maintain control. I looked at the evidence spread across my desk. Going to that dinner meant putting everything on the line. My relationship with my sister, my standing in the family, maybe even my safety. Given Oliver's warning, not going meant abandoning Marlo to his manipulation. I started organizing the documents into a folder, my decision made. Oliver Grant wanted to play games? Fine. But he was about to learn that some sisters are willing to burn everything down to protect their own. Tomorrow night would change everything. I just hoped Marlo would forgive me for what I had to do. The family dinner felt like a powder keg waiting for a spark. I arrived early, folder of evidence tucked in my bag, to find Oliver already there, helping my mother set the table as if he owned the place. Marlo sat nearby, unnaturally quiet, her engagement ring glinting like a shackle. Just in time, Oliver smiled. I was telling your parents about an interesting conversation I had with your boss today. My hand froze on the back of my chair. Excuse me? Oliver's been so helpful, my mother beamed. He mentioned your difficulties at work lately. The missed meetings, the suspicious computer activity. What exactly did you tell them? I kept my voice steady, though my heart hammered. Only my concerns about your well-being, Oliver said smoothly. After all, investigating private financial records during work hours could be seen as problematic. The threat was clear. He'd gotten to my job before I could expose him. My father cleared his throat. Alara, if you're having troubles. I'm not. I pulled out my chair, the scrape against the floor cutting through the tension. But since we're discussing concerning behavior, should we talk about the prenup, Oliver? Marlo's head snapped up. Alara, don't. Or maybe the photos with Jessica Morgan from April? I continued. The ones taken while you were supposedly exclusive with my sister? Oliver's smile didn't waver, but his knuckles whitened around his water glass. I think you're misinterpreting. Show them, Marlo suddenly interrupted. Her voice was barely a whisper. Everyone turned to look at her. Show them what? My mother asked. My hands shook slightly as I reached for my bag, but Oliver spoke first. Darling, remember what we discussed about your anxiety? How you sometimes imagine. I saw the prenup, my father cut in quietly. All eyes shifted to him. Marlo brought it to my office this morning. Oliver's mask slipped for just a moment. That was meant to be private. Like the clause about her inheritance? I pulled out the documents. Or the one about controlling all her future earnings. Or maybe we should discuss your company's pattern of targeting vulnerable businesses, stripping their assets, and… Enough. Oliver slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. For the first time, his careful facade cracked. You have no idea what you're talking about. I think she does, Marlo said, standing slowly. I called Jessica today. The room went deadly quiet. You did what? Oliver's voice was dangerous now. She told me everything. About how you did the same thing to her, the expensive gifts, the debt, the isolation. How you nearly destroyed her family's company after she broke things off. Marlo, sweetheart, my mother started, but Marlo held up her hand. I also called the bank, she continued, growing stronger. The credit card debt you promised to handle? It's been transferred to my name. All of it. Oliver stood, his charm evaporating entirely. You ungrateful little… Choose your next words very carefully, I warned, pulling out my phone. I'm recording. He looked around the table, seeing the shifting allegiances. My father's quiet anger. My mother's dawning horror. Marlo's trembling defiance. This isn't over, he snarled, grabbing his coat. Actually, it is, Marlo said. She pulled off the engagement ring and set it on the table. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Your lawyer, actually. Turns out she was very interested in some of your recent activities. Oliver's face went white. Without another word, he stormed out, the front door slamming behind him. The silence that followed felt like glass about to shatter. Then Marlo burst into tears, and our mother rushed to hold her. My father picked up the documents I'd brought, reading them with a clenched jaw. I sat there, adrenaline draining, when I felt Marlo's hand grab mine under the table. She squeezed once, hard, and I knew without words what she was saying. Thank you. I'm sorry. I should have listened. But this wasn't over. Oliver's threat hung in the air, and I knew him well enough now to know he wouldn't go quietly. The question was, what would he do next? And more importantly, were we ready for it? The email arrived at 3 a.m., 3 days after the dinner confrontation. I'd been sleeping on Marlo's couch since then, neither of us wanting to be alone. The subject line was simple, your choice. Oliver had been busy. Attached were photos of every person I'd contacted during my investigation, every document I'd accessed, every call I'd made. The message below was equally simple. Board meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Come alone or these go to the SEC. I sat in the dark, staring at my laptop screen until Marlo found me. What's wrong? She clicked on a lamp. Alara. I closed the laptop. Nothing, just work stuff. But at 8:45 the next morning, I stood in front of Oliver's office building, my hands shaking as I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from my boss, 2 from my father, and a text from Marlo. Where are you? The lawyer's waiting. I turned my phone off and walked inside. Oliver's executive suite took up the entire top floor. He was waiting by the window, backlit by morning sun, looking every bit the successful businessman he pretended to be. Right on time, he smiled. Always the responsible one, aren't you? What do you want? Want? I want you to understand your position. He gestured to a folder on his desk. Inside is a confession, detailing how you illegally accessed private financial records, manipulated my former fiancé, and attempted to sabotage my company. That's ridiculous. Is it? Your digital footprints say otherwise. And your company's board would be very interested to know how you used their resources for your personal vendetta. My throat went dry. You're the one who… I'm the one who built something, he cut in sharply. While you played detective, I was creating wealth, opportunities, connections. Do you really think anyone will believe your version over mine? He was right. I'd been so focused on protecting Marlo, I'd left myself exposed. Every move I'd made to uncover his schemes could be twisted to incriminate me instead. Sign the confession, he continued. Take full responsibility. In return, I'll ensure you merely lose your job, rather than face criminal charges. And of course, I'll leave your sister's debt exactly where it is, in her name. You're insane. I'm practical. You have 10 minutes to decide. He walked to the door. "Oh, and don't bother recording this conversation." The room scrambled. Alone in his office, I opened the folder. The confession was meticulous, turning every piece of evidence I'd gathered against me. My hands trembled as I reached the signature line. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I'd turned it back on out of habit. A message from an unknown number. "Check your email." Now, using Oliver's own computer, I logged into my account. There it was, an email from his lawyer. Not to me, but to the firm's ethics board, copied to me by mistake. It detailed Oliver's pattern of manipulation, including recordings of his threats to other women before Marlo. The timestamp, 2 minutes ago. The door opened. Oliver strode in, phone to his ear, face contorted with rage. "What do you mean, resigned?" "I own your—" He froze, seeing his computer screen. "Your lawyer," I said, quietly standing. "The one Marlo talked to?" Apparently, she's been gathering her own evidence. For months. Oliver lunged for the computer, but I was already forwarding the email to everyone I knew. His hand caught my arm, bruisingly tight. "You think this changes anything?" he snarled. "I'll destroy you." "No," a voice came from the doorway. "You won't." My father stood there, phone recording, with 2 police officers behind him. "Assault," he said calmly. "Witnessed and recorded. Would you like to add that to the growing list of charges?" Oliver released me, stepping back as his carefully constructed world began to crumble. But watching the officers read him his rights, I felt no triumph. Just bone-deep exhaustion and a haunting question: how many other women had he done this to? And how many others like him were still out there, hiding behind wealth and power? The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The courthouse hallway felt endless as we waited for Oliver's bail hearing to begin. 3 weeks had passed since his arrest, and the media circus had only grown as more victims came forward. I sat between Marlo and my mother, both unusually quiet, while my father paced nearby. "He's going to get out, isn't he?" Marlo's voice was barely a whisper. Before I could answer, the doors opened. Oliver walked in with his legal team, somehow looking even more polished in handcuffs. He caught my eye and smiled, that same confident, controlling smile. "All rise," the bailiff called. The hearing proceeded like a choreographed dance. Oliver's lawyer cited his community standing, his business responsibilities, his charitable works. The prosecution countered with flight risk concerns and the mounting evidence of financial crimes. Then Oliver did something unexpected. He asked to address the court. "Your Honor," he began, his voice carrying that familiar persuasive charm, "I've made mistakes. But everything I did was out of love, for Marlo, for my company, for the people who depend on me." I felt Marlo tense beside me. "These accusations come from misunderstandings and jealousy." His eyes found mine, particularly from those who might benefit from my downfall. "That's not—" I started to stand, but my father's hand on my shoulder stopped me. "Wait," he murmured. Oliver continued, "I'm prepared to make full restitution. To demonstrate my good faith, I've already arranged to clear Miss Thompson's credit card debt." Marlo's sharp intake of breath drew attention. She stood slowly, shrugging off our mother's restraining hand. "Your Honor." Her voice shook but grew stronger with each word. "May I speak?" The judge considered, then nodded. "The debt Oliver mentions? He created it. He convinced me to spend money I didn't have, promised to handle it, then used it to control me. Just like he used my insecurities, my family's expectations, and my fear of disappointing everyone." Oliver's mask slipped slightly. "Marlo, darling." "I'm not finished." She stepped forward. "I've spent weeks thinking I was stupid for falling for his manipulation. But I'm not the stupid one. He is. Because he underestimated my sister. He underestimated me. He thought money and charm could buy him whatever he wanted." "Miss Thompson," the judge interrupted, "do you have evidence of these claims?" "Yes, Your Honor." My father stepped forward, holding a familiar folder. Financial records, witness statements, and recordings documenting a pattern of manipulation and fraud extending well beyond my daughter's case. Oliver's lawyers huddled around him, whispering urgently, but his eyes remained locked on Marlo. "You ungrateful little," he started, but his lawyer grabbed his arm. Too late. The mask had cracked completely, revealing the rage beneath. He shrugged off his lawyer's restraint. Everything I gave you, everything I promised, you're throwing it away for what? Some misguided sense of family loyalty. No, Marlo said quietly. I'm choosing myself. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. That's enough. Bail denied. Defendant will be remanded until trial. As officers approached to escort Oliver out, he turned to me one last time. This isn't over. You have no idea what's coming. Actually, I stood, finally letting months of anger surface. It is over. Your lawyer didn't just send evidence about your crimes against Marlo. She sent everything. Every scheme, every victim, every corrupt deal. It's all coming out. The color drained from his face as understanding hit. His own attorney had betrayed him, just as he had betrayed everyone else. Later, outside the courthouse, my mother pulled both Marlo and me into an unexpected hug. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have seen it. Should have listened. We all should have, my father added. Marlo squeezed my hand. You did. You saw everything. Not everything, I admitted. I was so focused on exposing Oliver, I almost missed what really mattered. Us, this family, being honest with each other. Speaking of honesty, my father cleared his throat. There are some things we need to discuss. About favorites and fairness and how we move forward. I looked at my family, really looked at them, and saw something I'd missed before. The possibility of change, of healing. Of building something stronger from the broken pieces Oliver left behind. Yes, I said. Let's talk. 6 months after Oliver's arrest, I stood in my childhood bedroom, packing away the last traces of who I used to be. The trial was over, the headlines fading, and life was settling into a new normal. Marlo had moved back home temporarily, working remotely for a design firm that actually valued her talent. Found something, she called from the hallway, waving an old photo album. Remember this? We sat on my bed, flipping through pictures of 2 sisters who used to be inseparable. Before expectations and favoritism drove us apart. Before Oliver. I was always trying to be you, Marlo admitted, touching a photo where she'd clearly copied my hairstyle. Perfect, responsible Alara. I thought if I couldn't be that, I had to be something completely different. I wanted to be you, I countered. Everyone loved you so easily. Not everyone. She closed the album. The right people loved you all along. I was just too blind to see it. A knock at the door interrupted us. Our father stood there, holding an envelope. Before you finish packing, he said, there's something you should read. Inside was a letter, dated years ago, written in his familiar handwriting. Dear Alara, I'm writing this on your first day at university, watching you build your own path despite our mistakes. Your mother and I failed you, me especially. I let my fear of conflict silence my pride in your strength, your integrity, your fierce protection of those you love. I kept this letter, adding to it every time you achieved something we didn't properly celebrate. Every time you stood up for what was right, even when we didn't listen. What happened with Oliver showed me the cost of silence. You saw the truth when we were blinded by appearances. You fought for your sister when we couldn't. You showed me what real strength looks like. I'm giving you this now because you're packing up your old life, and I want you to know, you never needed to prove yourself. You never needed to compete for love. You were always enough, exactly as you are. Love, Dad. I looked up to find both my parents in the doorway now, my mother wiping tears. We're selling the house, my father announced quietly. What? Marlo and I spoke in unison. It's time for a fresh start, our mother explained. Somewhere without all these old patterns and memories. Besides, my father added, the money will help with Marlo's debt and your down payment on that condo you've been eyeing. Dad, you don't have to. We want to, my mother cut in. We want to do better, be better. For both of you. Later that evening, as we sorted through more boxes, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Oliver had attempted to make a deal, offering to expose others involved in his schemes. Are you going to read it? Marlo asked, seeing my hesitation. No, I decided, putting the phone away. His story isn't ours anymore. She nodded, understanding. Speaking of stories, Katie called. She's starting a support group for women who've survived relationships like, well, she asked if I'd help. Will you? I think so. Turn it into something good. She paused, then added, she asked about you too. Said they could use someone who knows how to spot the warning signs. I thought about Oliver's other victims, about all the others still out there, trapped in beautiful cages of manipulation and control. Maybe I said, but first, I need to finish something. I pulled out my laptop and opened a blank document. The cursor blinked, waiting. What are you writing? Marlo peered over my shoulder. Our story. The real one. I began typing. Not about Oliver, but about us. About family and forgiveness and finding your voice. And revenge, she asked with a small smile. No, I replied, thinking of the letter in my pocket. About justice. And healing. And how sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming who you were always meant to be. Marlo squeezed my shoulder and left me to write. Outside, moving boxes waited to be filled. Downstairs, our parents were planning a future free from old mistakes. And here, in this room where everything began, I started our story the only way I could. My name is Alara, and this is how my sister and I saved each other.
When my family moved from Kenya to Canada when I was 12 years old, my life drastically changed. Through this change, I was able to get to know a thriving new world full of interesting chances, friendly people, and various cultures. Because of my father's business success, we were able to live comfortably, which facilitated our adjustment to this new environment. I met Russell, the man who would become my husband, in high school. Over the years, our relationship saw ups and downs, but at the age of 22, we made the decision to totally commit to one another and get married. I was overjoyed, seeing a future full of happiness and love. But there was one major roadblock in our way. Doris, Russell's mother. She publicly opposed our plans to be married. I could not get rid of the impression that her disapproval stemmed, at least in part, from my Kenyan background. Doris used to say quiet, disturbing things that always made me feel uncomfortable. Russell was not fazed by these conflicts, in contrast to his mother. He loved me and our relationship, appreciating me more for who I was than what I had come from. He continued to be supportive and reaffirmed his commitment to our union in the face of his mother's displeasure. Our wedding day was a complicated emotional one. Even though I was overjoyed to be married Russell, I could not help but feel that Doris would not approve. Resolved, I tried not to let any bad vibes get in the way of my love for Russell. Over the next few days, Doris's contempt grew stronger. Her frequent insulting remarks about my heritage and culture hurt me. I hoped for a good connection with my mother-in-law, but it didn't seem possible. Russell, who was divided in his love for me and his mother, attempted to heal the distance between us. The mood remained tense, but he vowed to deal with Doris's problems. Her persistently subtle jabs and invasive inquiries about my past were depressing and started to have an adverse effect on my mental and emotional well-being. Russell and I were dedicated to creating our future together in spite of these obstacles. After moving into our new home, we concentrated on our objectives and careers. But Doris's persistent disapproval and tacit animosity kept casting a pall over our delight until her comments finally got too much. My tolerance had finally broken. I had always tried to be cool under pressure and courteous to everyone. However, Doris's persistent harsh comments eventually got to me. I had never raised my voice at someone before, but in a fit of rage I did so. I just can't take any more of your constant remarks. They're starting to get boring. Yes, I'm just sharing my thoughts. You don't need to be acting so defensively. Voicing thoughts. You seem to be picking on me nonstop due of my heritage. Like everyone else, I'm deserving of respect. Although you appear really sensitive about everything, I hope not to offend you. Sensitivity is not at issue here. It all comes down to respect. Since I am your daughter-in-law, please be considerate and understanding. Maybe I wouldn't have to say these things if you made an effort to blend in a little more. Come in, I spent years as a member of this community. In order to please you, I shouldn't have to change who I am because this is also my home. Just so you know, I never asked for or desired your consent to marry your son. I am aware that you had other ideas for him. It's not fair. What should be important to you is that we love each other. Maybe I would be more accepting if you were from a more traditional background. I don't require your approval. I will not allow you to make fun of me because I take pride in my ancestry. It is your responsibility to address your prejudice. Well, maybe things would be simpler if you had married someone from your own culture. That's not the point. We are married and you need to come to terms with that. Your ongoing disapproval is causing us pain, and I won't allow you to dampen our happiness. I never expected you to speak to me like this. Why are you being so aggressive? Perhaps you never anticipated that I would stand up for myself. I'm finished trying to please you. If that's how you feel, perhaps it's best if we keep our distance. That suits me fine. I deserve to be surrounded by people who respect and appreciate me for who I am. You're being unreasonable. No, I'm simply tired of being mistreated. I am part of your family now, whether you like it or not, and it was time for you to start treating me accordingly. If you couldn't manage that, then perhaps it was best for us to maintain some distance. Suit yourself, she replied. I will. Thank you, and I hope you take some time to reflect on how your actions are affecting your relationship with your son. I responded. I decided it was time to leave. Maybe when you're ready to treat me with the respect I deserve, we can have another conversation. Until then, take care. With that, I left the room, feeling a tumultuous mix of anger and sadness. Confronting Doris was difficult, but standing up for myself was necessary. From that moment, I knew my relationship with her might be irreparably damaged, but I felt confident in my decision. I deserved respect and wouldn't tolerate any more subtle jabs or hurtful comments. My focus had to be on my marriage and building a joyful life with Russell, regardless of Doris's disapproval. When I shared the details of our confrontation with Russell, he surprised me by fully supporting me. He even went as far as to tell his mother that she needed to treat me with respect. However, the situation escalated dramatically when Doris threatened to disown him as well. This was a shock to both of us, and I could see the pain it caused Russell. His mother's willingness to disown her son because he defended his wife was heartbreaking. Yet this difficult situation helped us realize something crucial. We didn't need toxic people in our lives, even if they were family. We deserved love and respect, and if someone couldn't provide that, they didn't deserve a place in our lives. As tough as it was to see Doris behave this way, it served as a wake-up call for Russell. He began to understand that his mother's negativity and disapproval were only holding him back from true happiness. It was time for him to move beyond the toxicity and build a life with me based on love and mutual understanding. In the months that followed, Doris cut ties with us. Although Russell was deeply affected by his mother's decision, he still missed her despite everything she had said and done. Wanting to support him in finding closure and perhaps paving the way for reconciliation, I planned a dinner date at Russell's favorite restaurant, hoping it would offer him some comfort and maybe even a new beginning. When we arrived at the restaurant and I gave my name, the maitre d' at the front desk looked puzzled and informed me that my name was on the blacklist. This took me by surprise, as Russell and I had always been regular patrons there. Confused and hoping to clear up the misunderstanding, I requested to speak with the manager. To our astonishment, the manager emerged, revealing herself to be none other than Doris. During the months we hadn't seen her, she had been busy expanding her portfolio, which now included managing this very restaurant, Applebee's, our favorite spot. It seemed too calculated to be a mere coincidence. Seeing her there, I felt a surge of shock and disbelief at her pettiness. Well, what do we have here? Doris greeted us. I never thought I'd see the day when you two would show up at my restaurant. She didn't miss a beat in informing us that we were not welcome. Unable to hold back his frustration, Russell began to raise his voice, creating a scene in the restaurant. I found myself torn between backing Russell and trying to prevent the situation from escalating further. Doris, we didn't come here to cause trouble. We just wanted to enjoy a peaceful dinner. I tried to reason with her. A peaceful dinner with the likes of you? I don't think so, Doris retorted smugly. It's quite amusing to see you both here, practically begging to be let in after everything that's happened. What are you talking about, Mom? We've always loved this place, and now you're saying we're not welcome. Russell was incredulous. It's quite simple, Doris said. When you chose to marry this person against my wishes, I had to make a decision. I couldn't allow my son to make such a dreadful mistake. I decided to safeguard my business from your poor choices. Doris explained coldly, You're sick, Mom. It's disgusting that you're doing this on purpose, just to spite us. Russell accused, his voice filled with dismay. Oh, please, Russell. I'm just looking out for my reputation. I can't have people like you associating with my business. Doris dismissed. This is ridiculous, Mom. You're choosing your bigotry over your son. I thought you were better than this. Russell lamented, the hurt clear in his voice. You're the one who chose this path, Russell. Don't blame me for the decisions you've made. Doris retorted sharply. As she spoke, the eyes of everyone in the restaurant were fixed on us, casting an uncomfortable spotlight. It felt deeply embarrassing to be escorted out of Applebee's, a place we once enjoyed freely. Let's just leave. Russell, arguing won't change her mind. I suggested quietly, eager to escape the escalating tension. You're right, Janice. It's not worth it, Russell replied, disappointment etched on his face. And don't come back. No one wants you here. Doris called out after us, her voice filled with disdain. With that, we stepped out of the restaurant and started to wander aimlessly down the street. Russell was deeply upset, so I encouraged him to open up about his feelings, especially his connection to Applebee's. Let it all out, Russell. How are you really feeling? I know Applebee's was more than just a restaurant to you. Applebee's, he explained, his voice heavy with loss, was a place where my dad and I bonded. We'd sit by the window, order our favorite meals, and just talk for hours about everything. It's where we connected. It sounds like such a meaningful place for you, and I can't believe Doris would use it to hurt you like this, especially knowing how much those moments with your dad meant to you. It's just so unfair. She knows how special Applebee's is to me, and yet she chose to use it against us just because she doesn't approve of our marriage. You deserve so much better than this, Russell. I wish I could fix it. It's awful to see someone trying to dismantle what we have. I always thought family was meant to support each other, not pull one another apart. It's tough to make sense of why she acts this way, but sometimes people let their biases get the best of them. We might not be able to change that, but we can choose our response. You're right. I'm done letting her negativity affect us. What matters is that we have each other. Exactly. We'll face this together. And actually, I have some news that might brighten your day a bit. What's that? He asked, curious despite the somber mood. Well, it turns out my dad recently acquired the entire block of buildings on this street, including Applebee's. Really? Why didn't you mention this before? It just happened. He finalized the deal with the investors recently. I was still grappling with the uncertainty of how everything would unfold. I had planned to share the news about my dad owning the complex during a celebratory dinner at the restaurant. That's incredible, Janice. I need to congratulate him later, Russell said, genuinely impressed. We can do that later, but right now there's something else we need to address about your mom, I replied, hinting at a more immediate concern. You see, my dad's quite formidable when it comes to business matters. He won't take kindly to how Doris treated us. He's going to handle this situation. Feeling a mix of urgency and necessity, I decided to call my dad right then and put him on speakerphone so Russell could listen in. I explained everything that had transpired at Applebee's. My dad was upset by the news. I knew Doris wasn't fond of you, but to kick you out of a restaurant, that's a new low. I'm sorry I hadn't reviewed the documents sooner. I only recently received the title deeds for this property, and I haven't had the chance to evaluate all the managers yet. But rest assured, I'll take care of this immediately. He reassured us, don't worry at all. Give me 20 minutes, and I'll be there to sort this out personally. Hearing my dad's determined words brought me a sense of relief, but also a bit of concern. I knew he was capable of handling the situation, but I hoped it wouldn't escalate into something messier. My dad is not someone to be trifled with, especially in business. He is also a firm believer in treating customers with fairness and compassion. So Russell and I waited nervously near the restaurant, trusting that my dad would resolve the issue appropriately. We weren't sure exactly what he planned to do, but we believed in his judgment. Moments later, my dad arrived, and we followed him back into Applebee's. He walked with a confident stride that suggested he was ready to take on whatever needed to be done. As he entered, he called out for Doris loud enough for everyone inside to hear. The tension in the restaurant was palpable as heads turned to watch the unfolding scene. Doris stepped forward, visibly annoyed by the interruption. Doris probably thought she could dismiss my father as easily as she had dismissed us. But my dad is not one to be brushed aside lightly. He raised an eyebrow at her and began with a tone of fox concern. Doris, my dear, it seems you haven't been keeping up with the latest developments. Did they forget to inform you about the new owner of the 2nd Green Avenue complex? Doris appeared visibly shaken, clearly caught off guard by the turn of events. What are you talking about? Who is it? She stammered, confusion laced in her voice. My dad couldn't suppress a small knowing smile. Well, that would be me. I'm the new owner, and I must say I've been here for less than a week. And I'm already encountering troubling complaints about your management. Doris's complexion turned a shade paler as the reality of her predicament dawned on her. I didn't know that, she muttered, flustered. Well, perhaps if you had checked your emails or paid closer attention to what's happening around you, you might have known. But it's too late for apologies now, my dad responded with a chuckle. It was satisfying to see Doris on the receiving end of the type of treatment she had meted out to us. Russell, who had been quietly seething by my side, stepped forward and said with resolve, "You had no right to treat us, or anyone the way you did, especially Janice. Oh, we've always known you to harbor ill will, but as someone in charge of a public establishment, you should have been the first to understand that discrimination based on personal prejudices is unacceptable. You've clearly violated that principle, and I don't think you're fit to manage this place." Doris, now desperate, pleaded, "Wait, I'm sorry. I didn't realize." Even if you didn't know he was the owner, you should have treated all customers fairly without letting your personal biases interfere, I added firmly. Please let's discuss this privately. Doris tried to salvage the situation. There's no need, my dad interjected, his voice loud enough for the bystanders to hear. I believe everyone here would be interested to know that the person managing Applebee's, who allowed her racism to affect her professional duties, is no longer part of the staff. The murmurs in the restaurant grew louder, fueled by the unfolding drama. Doris, utterly embarrassed, could only stand in silence as she faced the consequences of her actions. Russell and I watched, relieved that justice was being served. Russell and I couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and triumph, finally receiving justice after enduring Doris's harsh treatment for so long. My dad decisively handled the situation, warning her that he would call security to escort her out if she didn't leave voluntarily. Embarrassed and on the brink of tears, Doris started her walk of shame out of the restaurant. As she made her exit, the mood in the restaurant instantly lifted. People began to clap and cheer, celebrating her departure. I felt a profound sense of relief wash over me. Russell and I immediately went over to my dad and gave him a big hug, thanking him for his decisive intervention. "You're the best, Dad," I said with a smile, and he chuckled, giving us both a reassuring pat on the back. "It was my pleasure, my dear." "I couldn't stand by and watch you two suffer because of her," he replied with a warm smile. Dad then excused himself to check on the kitchen staff and find the next in command to appoint as the acting manager amidst the recent upheaval. He returned shortly after, explaining that he had some important business matters to finalize, including formally terminating Doris and organizing the paperwork to officially name the new acting manager. "Okay, my work here is done for now. You two enjoy your meal on the house," he said, signaling for us to take a seat and relax. As we settled down at a table, a whirlwind of emotions enveloped me. I was still processing the swift turn of events, amazed at how quickly everything had escalated. Yet above all, I felt incredibly grateful for my dad's support and the strength he provided us through this challenging time. It was comforting to know that no matter what, we had someone on our side ready to step in when needed. This is basically a freeloading situation for you. Kindly depart. My sister-in-law, who was quietly seated next to me, narrowed her eyes and grinned at me, enjoying my look of astonishment, even though my brother had spoken such dreadful words to me. I had lived with our mother for a long time, and I immediately turned over to her. She remarked, looking sorrowful, "It seems preferable to live with your brother and his wife, Linda. They graduated from a prominent national university and work at a top tire firm. You're never alone in the house." With composure, she stated this. It appears that my mother, sister-in-law, and brother are unaware of the extent of my financial contributions and the amount of labor I have done to support our family. I answered, "Okay, I'll go," despite the agony in my heart. "Never need my assistance again," I said as I began to pack my must-have items. As she observed me, she grinned smugly and remarked cynically, "Oh, giving up so easily." However, nobody is certain who will eventually find themselves in such a plight. Ignoring this truth could cause a number of issues and difficulties. Linda is my name. I've had a lot of success with internet-based enterprises, and I'm always looking for new opportunities to expand. At first, I had pictured myself working regular hours for a conventional business. Something that happened to me in my second year of college completely turned my life around during my time in college. Due to his sickness, my father fainted, and we were unable to provide for him on a regular basis without a caregiver. My mother was not very good at housework and was somewhat reckless when it came to cooking and cleaning. She therefore mostly relied on hired caretakers to handle my father's unforeseen care requirements. However, because caretakers weren't always around, my mother assumed the job of caregiver by default. She tried to hold it in a little while longer, frequently giving my father the cold shoulder, even when he indicated he needed to go to the restroom. Every time anything like this occurred, I had to step in to help my father. Under these conditions, I started to seriously consider and wonder what would happen to my father if I started working a full-time job. To be honest, I couldn't fathom my mother taking care of him on her own. In light of this, I started looking at ways to make money without having to leave my house. Using my economics major, I researched internet business-related concepts and methods during my time in college. To acquire knowledge, I worked with friends who were experts in economics and management. Additional partnerships with tech-savvy acquaintances from different departments gave our internet business initiative a boost. Yes, in fact. Our office is a lovely and functional space. But that office is mainly used as a dedicated place for employees who struggle to focus when working from home, as well as for new hires who require orientation or training. For my part, I don't often go to that workplace. A room at home where I can spend time with my father serves as my main workspace. That's where I do most of my work. My father once questioned me, "Did you give up on a full-time position for me? Or was it challenging for you to secure a position as a fresh graduate?" He was curious about my work arrangement. I shed a tear or two while feeling bad about it. I gave a detailed explanation of the internet company I've been running since college. There are no problems with working from home, and the firm is still steady and growing. Upon hearing this, Linda said, "You've truly grown into a responsible adult." It's a far cry from town, and he expressed genuine gratitude from his heart. Actually, I am the only one in charge of supporting my father's daily life. The truth is, I'm not an only child. I have an older brother named Tom, who is 2 years older than me. He tends to be selfish and rarely puts others' needs first. In reality, Tom excelled academically and showcased his talent from his student days. After graduating from a prestigious national university, he leveraged his talents and smoothly secured a position in a top-tier company. When our family received the news of his employment, we were taken aback but simultaneously wanted to acknowledge and celebrate his achievements. Thus, my father, mother, and I all tried to contact him to convey our blessings. However, his response was contrary to our expectations. He said, "I will start a new life in the city and will never return to that countryside. I want you to believe I'm doing well on this new way." With that, he ended the call so suddenly. Ever since that day, we couldn't contact him at all. His lines of communication were unilaterally cut off, and all our messages and calls were ignored. Although Tom had received ample financial support from father for his college education and independent living, he never showed any gratitude and distanced himself from us. In this situation, both father and I felt repeated shock and disappointment. Amidst this, a hypothesis emerged among us. We wondered if mother was secretly communicating with Tom. However, despite father's deteriorating health and the essential daily care he needed, the absence of any contact from Tom made it clear that he didn't think of fulfilling his responsibilities or roles as a family member. After going through this, one day an unexpected report came to us from Mom recently. I got a call from Tom. It seems he's met a woman he's considering marrying. He asked if we could give them a wedding gift. I'm thinking of preparing around $99,000 as a heartfelt gift. Do you think both of you can help with this? Conveying this to father and me with a slightly nervous expression, considering our financial situation. Mother spends most of her days at home, except for the 3 days she works part-time. The salary she earns usually goes to lunches and shopping with her friends, so she hardly saves any money. I couldn't hide my surprise at Mom's intention to request such a large amount for Tom, with whom we hadn't been in contact for so long. I felt anger but listened calmly at first. His face then turned red. Why can he do this? He hasn't contacted us since he left home, and now he suddenly asks for such a large sum for his wedding. I can't understand it, and there's no way I'm going to agree to it." Raising his voice in anger at Mother, who looked a bit displeased and gazed at me with a troubled expression, Father said, "Think about it. Tom has decided to get married. I genuinely wish for him to get married and bring grandchildren. More than for you, Linda, who stays at home and doesn't connect with the outside world. It's a parent's feelings. Please understand that." She calmly retorted that the primary reason she didn't work in a regular employment manner was largely influenced by Mother. So I couldn't understand how Mother could say such things to me. Father also couldn't hide his anger at Mother's words because she didn't help me properly with my care. Linda is really concerned about my health and stays home for me. I've given a lot of financial support to Tom over the years, but I've never heard a word of gratitude from him. How can one even think of demanding a large celebration gift for someone like him? That day, the house echoed with the loud arguments between my father and Mother. From the next room, I listened to my mother's accusations, being concerned about my father's health. It was true that my mother always favored my brother, especially praising his academic and other talents. She neither appreciated nor understood my decision to choose a house out of concern for my father's health. This fact deeply saddened me. Eventually, Mother decided to go out to dine, needing a change of scene, and temporarily left the house. After she left, my father said to me, "Linda, thank you for being by my side, even in times like this." "It's okay, Dad. I've known since I was a child how Mom has always favored Tom. I'm fine. I've made you overcome so many challenges every day. I just ask you for care, and it pains me that I can't actually be of help to you." "Dad, that's not true. You've allowed me to pursue higher education and have always encouraged me with warm words for my efforts and endeavors. If you weren't by my side, I might not have even considered venturing into online business as I do now." My father's face lightened up, and a small smile brought me relief. On the other hand, I couldn't understand why my mother, having a father who's always understanding and caring for children, continues with her self-centered behavior. As for my brother avoiding communication with the family for years and suddenly demanding a wedding gift, it's questionable in terms of family ties. But the most shocking event for me occurred shortly after. It was the sudden news of my father's passing. One quiet morning, amidst a usual routine, I found he wasn't moving. As time felt frozen, I called an ambulance, but it was already too late. He had passed away. His friendly nature and warm-heartedness were evident from the many people who flocked to his wake. Ordinarily, during a funeral, the wife is expected to make arrangements, but Mother said, "I'm very busy right now, Linda. I'm entrusting all funeral arrangements to you." While saying this, she frequently checked her phone with a concerned look, and I couldn't sense a bit of support or cooperation from her. I don't know what she was distracted by. Although I felt anger, I was determined to concentrate on preparing for the wake and funeral to send my father off properly. Then a surprising event unfolded. A while after the funeral began, my brother entered the venue hand in hand with a woman dressed in a flashy pink dress. What's more, he was casually dressed in a hoodie, clearly inappropriate for this solemn occasion. As all the attendees looked on in shock, only our mother approached my brother with a bright smile. "I'm glad you came, Tom. Now your father's inheritance will be ours," Mom boldly declared. The atmosphere in the hall changed completely after my mother's sudden statement. All eyes were on my mother and brother, and the venue was filled with collective surprise and bewilderment. Honestly, for Linda, who has been at home for a long time taking great care of Dad, I don't think she should expect any inheritance, Tom declared loudly. There seemed to be a hint of sarcasm in his words. I was surprised by his words and let out a deep sigh. I figured he must have been informed about the household situation and our father's health by our mother. However, she seemed oblivious to the fact that I had contributed a lot to the household finances, or whether there truly was any considerable inheritance from our father who once required care. Neither mother nor Tom seemed to understand the reality or appreciate my efforts. It's true that Dad once held a senior position and was rumored to have had a good income, but making such inappropriate remarks at a funeral was undeniably disrespectful. This funeral feels somewhat gloomy and oppressive. By the way, Tom, even though receiving the inheritance might be in the distant future, should we leave now? After all, we get the inheritance even without attending this funeral, she said, pulling on Tom's arm. The moment I saw this woman, presumably my brother's new wife, I was convinced she was his wife. She seemed to have a vibe similar to Tom's. I thought she probably has a personality much like him to marry someone like him. I think I wish they'd leave as soon as possible. Quite unexpectedly, it seemed as though even our mother was in agreement with them. Shall we go eat sushi? Saying that, the three of them left the venue. The other relatives were also surprised by this turn of events. Some raised their voices in shock, but I suggested to our father that we should at least keep our composure. I suppressed my inner irritation and continued with the funeral proceedings. However, upon returning home, there was another surprise. On the dining table were 3 boxes of sushi, presumably ordered for delivery. The table was messy, with nothing cleared away. From the living room came voices and laughter. There were Mother, Tom, and his wife, Jessica, clearly enjoying themselves and drinking. "Ah, you're late, Linda. Can you make some snacks, whatever you're good at making? And can you buy some more alcohol? That would be so helpful, little sis." I was utterly shocked by these unexpected words from my brother and his wife. Seeing such insensitivity during our father's final rites and their apparent lack of regret or understanding was mind-boggling. Despite the tense atmosphere and the shocked expressions of other relatives, it seemed they didn't think they were doing anything wrong. Seeing my mother, who should be the one to correct such behavior, casually joining in their merriment made me feel it was right to have stayed. I wondered what would have happened had I not been there. Would they have even held a proper funeral? I told them there's no inheritance they're hoping for. There was no way I was going to comply with their request for more drinks or snacks. I had no reason to obey them. After that, a drunken Tom suddenly looked upset and said, "What are you talking about, Linda? You've always stayed at home doing nothing and caused trouble for our father. So now it is natural that we use our father's assets." Considering that Tom relied on our father for all his college living and tuition expenses, I couldn't understand his basis for such claims. I was both exasperated and headachy seeing him act like he owed our father nothing. By the way, this house was built by our dad, right? Normally, as the eldest son, it would be natural for Tom to inherit it. So why, Linda, who stays at home all day and does nothing, is living here? With those words, both mother and brother seemed to nod in agreement. The warmth that used to be in my mother's eyes for me was no longer there. To be honest, that's correct. This house is mine. I'd like the parasite living here to leave soon. After my brother's stern words, there was no guilt on the smiling face of my sister next to him. My mother, with whom I'd lived for many years, began to speak. To be honest, I feel more comfortable living with my son and his wife, who graduated from a top university and succeeded in society, than with you, Linda. It seemed they hadn't noticed at all how much I had contributed to this house over the years. I felt sadness and disappointment. I let out a deep sigh and decided to express my feelings. "I understand. I will leave here. Please don't ask anything of me from now on." I walked to my room and began to pack my things. Just then, I heard my sister's mocking voice. "She is really poor, don't you think so?" Seeing the three of them, my brother, his wife, and my mother, laughing at me, I bitterly smiled in my mind. Yes, in the current situation, I might seem the most miserable, but there's something I'd like them to know. The truth is, I've owned this house since my father was still alive. He entrusted it to me, and I accept it. Therefore, even before my father passed away, this house was legally registered in my name. However, my mother still lives in this house. She has spent a long time here. Even if I informed her of the current situation, she'd likely say, "I spent most of my life here and wouldn't leave easily." Considering this situation, I've been seriously thinking about what to do with the house, especially after seeing my mother's cold behavior during my father's funeral. My thoughts became stronger. I felt tired of my relationship with her and started to see her presence as a burden. I thought it would be lonely living alone in this big house, and maintaining it would also be challenging. So I decided to sell it. Seeing my mother and brother's family unaware of my decision and seemingly enjoying my situation, I couldn't help but feel pity. Their attitude, expecting some inheritance that my father supposedly had, seems rather ridiculous to me. My mother, during her healthier days, did have a stable income. However, since she became unable to work due to health issues, her income stopped, and she had to use her carefully saved savings to hire a helper for daily assistance. It's true that my mother withdrew money from her savings for daily expenses. However, even after my father fell ill and had some problems in everyday life, my mother strived to maintain her unchanged lifestyle. As a result, her savings gradually decreased. When I noticed that my father's savings had been completely depleted, I decided to contribute $3,000 every month to support the household. Though my mother took care of housework, she was not good at managing household finances. When shopping at the supermarket, she often made impulsive purchases, buying expensive items more than necessary. Seasonal sales and budgeting strategies didn't seem significant to her. Moreover, she tended to use the money she earned from her part-time job for her hobbies and leisure. Additionally, she withdrew more money from her daily expenses for her enjoyment, making it hard to comprehend her financial decisions. My father often said to me, "I'm sorry." The money saved by my father was ultimately used by my mother. When I finally decided to leave the house, I withdrew all the remaining balance from the account I had been supplying for household expenses. I couldn't imagine letting my mother use this money anymore. So the events of the day after I made up my mind to leave the house began. "Linga, did you take the household funds? It's the important money for our living." I was suddenly interrupted by my mother's voice over the phone during a quiet morning. I could sense a mix of surprise and blame in her tone. "Mom, which household funds are you talking about?" "The savings that your father built up over the years. When I checked, every account was empty." "Isn't it because you used up all those savings?" "Mom, what are you talking about? Are you surprised? I've left the household ledger on the living room table. In it, there's a record of you making frequent withdrawals using Dad's cherished savings. Not just me, but Dad knew about it too. After those savings were gone, I was the one financially supporting the house with $3,000 every month." From the other end of the phone, I heard my mother's footsteps rushing around, possibly searching for the ledger I mentioned. After that, the sound of the living room door opening. "Hey, Mom, what's happening? Weren't we supposed to inherit the estate after Dad passed away? Did you use it all up?" Anger and disappointment were evident in my brother's voice. I could also hear his wife's voice in the background. "It's unbelievable what you've done, Mother. Did you really call us from our hometown relying on our financial support?" That's really cold. No, I didn't mean it like that. It was clear that my mother had invited my brother and his wife here because of the inheritance. Given this truth, I felt deep down they would no longer trust her words. We moved here leaving stable jobs, expecting to receive the inheritance Dad was supposed to leave us. How are we supposed to live now? What, Tom? I had no idea you made such a big decision. This was completely new information to me as well. My brother used to have a respectable job at a major corporation, but I don't care about their decision because it doesn't directly impact my life, so I wasn't deeply concerned. Also, this monthly amount of about $2,700 upon checking the bank book. I found that Linda has been transferring it regularly, but Mom, you kept saying Linda wasn't working right. At my brother's words, Mother suddenly remembered our phone conversations and looked at me with a face full of shock and guilt. What's going on, Linda? She asked. Smiling slightly, I responded, you should look into something called remote work. These days, you can have a formal job without leaving home. I never told my family about the considerable success I had with my online business. It was clear to me that if they knew, my brother, his family, and even my mother would start relying on me. Worse, they might interfere with my business in some way. Please come back. Let our family spend time together again. Mom's voice had become very small, as if she had never blamed me at all. But I had no intention of returning to that house. Mom, you just want to rely on my money, don't you? By the way, about the house, while Dad was alive, considering the property tax payments, I took over the house and changed the ownership. It's now mine. I don't plan to live there anymore, so I asked a trusted real estate agent to sell it. That agent is actually run by my uncle. He was quite angry about the incident at the last funeral, so if my brother and his family stay in the house, he'll surely kick them out. I never imagined it would come to this, losing our home. Along with my mother's astonished voice, I could hear my brother's voice from the other end of the phone. What happened now? I felt too bothered to answer my brother's question. I had decided to leave everything up to Uncle regarding the future. If things were going well, Uncle would be on his way to meet my mother and my brother's family by now. He promised to handle and explain everything on my behalf, so I was at ease. Goodbye. I intend to sever ties with you and Mom. I won't be using this phone anymore. Farewell. After conveying that, I ended the call. Imagining their astonishment, I felt a fleeting little sadness. It would be hard for them to find me because I have plans to relocate abroad. A plan kept secret even from my father. I had always dreamt of living overseas. I was particularly drawn to the warmth of tropical countries and their multicultural settings. After my father passed away, when my mother and my brother's family told me to leave the house, I felt it was the perfect opportunity to realize my dream. I immediately began packing and started to look for a residence abroad. I was keen on finding a quiet place near the beach and devoted myself to house hunting. Currently, I am living alone in a short-term rental apartment. It's close to the city center with good transportation links, making it ideal for preparing for my move abroad. With the sudden eviction from the house, my brother, his family, and my mother are likely too preoccupied searching for a new place to bother about me. A little while later, when I heard that my brother, his wife, and my mother had started living together in a cramped apartment and were taking up part-time jobs to make ends meet, I had already started my new life abroad. According to information from my uncle, he had hired a particular detective agency to discreetly monitor the living conditions of my brother's family and mother. The three of them had moved into an old apartment in the city and began looking for short-term jobs. However, trying to maintain their previous lifestyle, they continued to spend beyond their means, living their daily lives without any notion of saving. As a result, my uncle heard from the detective that there were rumors they were borrowing money from potentially high-risk lenders. If things continue like this, they might face even more challenging situations with debt collectors. Given the past events and my decision to sever ties with them, I've avoided any further involvement, and it's unlikely I'll ever see them again. I work in an office and am 31 years old. My name is Shirley. A year ago, I tied the knot with Mason. After we had been dating for a year and a half, he proposed. We had met on a blind date. I felt that it was a little too soon, but I accepted his proposal because I had always wanted to settle down. Looking back, though, I see that I ought to have proceeded with more caution. Mason abruptly decided to change jobs shortly after our wedding. Startled, I questioned him about the reason behind his abrupt shift. He clarified that he hadn't been able to use all of his skills at his prior employment. The news that he had already resigned and would be departing his position at the end of the month was even more unexpected. Fortunately, he was able to swiftly find employment again, but at a lower salary than before. I wasn't too worried at first because I had a job. But Mason started pressuring me to give up my work. If his new job paid well enough for the two of us, I might have given it some thought. His pay was reduced after switching jobs recently, but he insisted it would rise soon without providing an exact date. It felt hazardous to quit my job in these uncertain financial times. In order to maintain our savings and pay for necessities like rent and auto insurance, we depended on my salary. Depending just on Mason's existing wage wasn't practical. Mason seemed to be trying to scare me one evening when he brought me the divorce papers. "You know I'm prepared for this at any time," he put forth. I told him to stop talking so much and think about what he had just said. Mason got up and went back to his room, unfazed. I was left thinking about my hasty actions and the surprising turn my life has taken since meeting Mason after this conversation. Mason and I had an agreement that I wouldn't leave until his pay increased. At first, he seemed to accept this, but the subject kept coming up. Whenever he brought it up, I responded to him with the same unwavering resolve. After a year of marriage, his pay remained unchanged, and he persisted in bringing up the subject. He would ask, "When are you going to quit?" I was occasionally inclined to respond sarcastically, but I forced myself to hold back because I knew that my income was what kept our finances stable. I believed that since leaving my work was so essential to him, he should concentrate on developing his profession in order to make a living wage. Over time, I started to understand Mason's constant demands that I quit my job. It was evident when we went to his parents' place. Mason would often seem concerned and tell his mother, Martha, that he wanted to make her life easier. Martha would thank him, and Mason would give me a serious look, as though urging me to give up. He implied that his mother required assistance, yet Martha was by no means defenseless. She had a part-time job that helped her find her social life and interests, in addition to being in good health. It was obvious she didn't need my care, but Mason persisted. He once commented, out of the blue, if only one of us was home during the day, we could check on Mom daily. It sounded burdensome and unnecessary that he thought I should visit Martha every day. I questioned him directly, asking what he expected me to do since Martha was perfectly capable on her own. Mason listed mundane tasks like helping with housework or running errands. It was evident he had ideas about how I could contribute, but none of them seemed to necessitate abandoning my career. This constant cycle of requests and explanations was draining. I needed Mason to understand that while I was happy to support his family when necessary, sacrificing my job without a compelling reason was not a decision I could agree to lightly. But Martha has her part-time job and spends most of her days out with friends, right? I pointed out to Mason when he suggested I could handle the housework during the day. His response baffled me. Was he suggesting I become his mother's maid? Mason was very concerned about maintaining a certain image, particularly in front of his parents. If he was so eager to take care of them, why not handle the household chores himself? Despite his insistence, I remained firm in my decision not to quit my job. I also chose not to visit my in-laws on my days off, although I made an effort to see them during major holidays like New Year's. Reflecting on our visits, I noticed a pattern. Mason often delegated tasks to me. He'd ask me to tidy up, assist his mom, or run errands. I resisted these requests. When he suggested I go to the store, I'd retort, "Don't you know this area better than I do?" His reply was always that it wouldn't look right if he did it himself, a rationale I found puzzling and manipulative. It seemed like he was more interested in controlling the situation and projecting an image of familial care than genuinely caring for his parents or me. Over time, my view of Mason shifted. It appeared he was more invested in appearances than true affection or respect for me. When I finally confronted him, asking why he didn't pitch in or even quit his job to care for his mother, his reaction was telling. He looked disgusted and uncomfortable, saying, "That's not something I'm supposed to do. I'm giving you these instructions so my mom will think you are a considerate, useful wife. I hope you realize how kind I am to you." His words were revealing. Essentially, he wanted to offload all the demanding tasks onto me and showcase his virtue as if it were an extraordinary feat. But I am not his servant or slave, nor do I deserve to be treated with disrespect in front of my in-laws. It became increasingly clear that Mason's priorities were skewed, valuing appearances over genuine partnership and support. If Mason keeps up with his unreasonable demands, I won't stay quiet. I'll assert myself. Despite numerous discussions, Mason remains unchanged, constantly pestering me with the same old question, "Are you going to quit your job?" Additionally, every time we visit my in-laws, he continues to boss me around, just as he always has. Reaching my limit, I decided it was crucial to have a serious conversation with him. "We need to talk about our future," I initiated, hoping to steer our conversation into something constructive. "What are you even trying to say?" Mason retorted, clearly annoyed. "I'm honestly fed up. I'm tired of you repeatedly asking me when I'll quit my job, and I'm exhausted from you pressuring me to take care of Martha." I laid out my grievances. "Why are you fed up with that? You're my wife, and it's your duty to care for your husband's parents," Mason countered. "Don't you think that's a huge responsibility to place solely on me? Shouldn't you, as their biological child, be responsible for helping with the housework and taking care of your parents in the first place?" I challenged his outdated views. "No way. It's not the wife's duty to do it. Are you the kind of person who doesn't care about family?" Mason accused, visibly upset by my resistance. "I'm disappointed to hear you say that," he added, seizing the opportunity to expose the double standard. "Let me ask you this. How have you been taking care of my parents? If I asked you to care for my parents, would you do it then?" Mason looked at me blankly, unable to grasp the parallel. "What are you saying? Why should a husband take care of his wife's parents? So does that mean you won't take care of my parents now or ever?" I pressed, trying to highlight his inconsistency. "The husband's parents and the wife's parents are completely different," Mason replied, missing the point. "What difference does that make anyway?" I said, feeling frustrated. "I didn't realize you were so clueless. It's like talking to my old boss." "What are you saying?" Mason asked, confused. "I'm saying the husband's parents should come first, and you should take care of your wife's parents. I replied, trying to emphasize the importance of mutual support and equality in our responsibilities. I had to clarify what I was trying to say, so I exclaimed, "So you only prioritize your own family by blood? I'm so disappointed in you. I won't be visiting your parents anymore." "Why would you do that?" "Enough is enough. I'm the one who wants you to stop this nonsense," I retorted. "No way." "How dare you talk back like that?" "My mom is right," Mason shot back, his temper flaring. "Ha, Mom was talking about you. She said you're a badly behaved wife. That's why she gave me this," Mason said, pulling a piece of paper from his bag. It was divorce papers. "What? You already had divorce papers ready?" I was shocked, but Mason seemed strangely proud. "See, I scared you, didn't I? I'm prepared for this anytime, so think about what you just said," Mason declared smugly before leaving for his room. Unbelievable. Why is Mason so selfish? That look of triumph on his face. It's clear the divorce papers are just a threat to make me obey him. The fact that Martha was involved made me even more suspicious. Mason is acting like a puppet for his mom, trying to control me while following her orders. It's ridiculous. I won't let Mason have his way. How can he not see that our marriage is in trouble when he acts like this? His lack of understanding just annoys me more. Mason had already completed the divorce papers and handed them to me with witnesses, including Martha and his friends. This meant I could sign and file them whenever I chose. The next day, after Mason went to work, I filled out the divorce papers and submitted them to the city office. As a precaution, I also filed a notice of non-acceptance of the marriage certificate. I called my parents and explained the situation, knowing Mason might threaten to file a marriage certificate on his own. When my parents learned that I had prepared the divorce papers, they were initially shocked but fully supported my decision. Outraged by Mason's behavior, they immediately offered to help me move my belongings. Taking a leave from work, I had my parents come over, and we relocated all my things to their house while Mason was away. I decided to stay with my parents for a while. It was the first time in a long time that I felt truly comfortable and at ease in their home. Reflecting on my marriage, it became clear that Mason never contributed his fair share to our household chores. I was the one cooking dinner after long work days and handling all the cleaning and laundry on my days off. On top of this, he expected me to also care for his parents, which was just not feasible. That evening, Mason called me, probably just back from work. "Hello. Hey, where are you right now?" he asked. "I'm at my parents' house," I replied. "Oh, why would you go back there without my permission? And where's all your stuff? Don't tell me you're staying the night," he questioned, his tone revealing his surprise and selfishness. I almost laughed at how oblivious he was to the seriousness of the situation, thinking I was merely staying overnight when I had taken most of my belongings with me. "I'm not coming back," I said firmly. "What are you talking about?" "Come back here and make me some food," he demanded. "Make it yourself," I replied, ending the call. I couldn't entertain a conversation about divorce with him if he continued to behave so dismissively. I decided to wait for him to come to my parents' house and blocked his number to give myself some peace. A week later, Mason showed up at my parents' home, accompanied by his parents. They all wore serious expressions as we met in the living room, 3 against 3. "How could you do this? How could you leave without my permission?" Mason demanded, his voice filled with incredulity and accusation. "You were treating me like a housekeeper, Mason. All I ever asked was that you take care of your family responsibilities," I responded, standing my ground. I countered, "That's not true. What kind of wife am I if I don't take care of Mason?" Martha gave me a fierce glare. My father began to tremble with anger, but I quickly stepped in. Mason told me to quit my job and take care of Martha, claiming it was my duty as his wife. Yet when it comes to my own family, he expects me to handle everything alone. Ultimately, Mason wants obedience and uses me to care for his parents while taking credit for it. That's why he prioritizes his parents over mine. Have you heard Mason say these things? Martha continued to glare, but Liam looked confused, indicating he hadn't been aware of this before. Let me clear the air, Mason said suddenly, bringing up the divorce papers and claiming it was all Martha's idea. Why would you suggest that? Liam asked, clearly surprised. Oh no, it's because Camila has an attitude problem, Martha stammered. And did you say that Camila's parents are the priority? I pressed. Well, it's only natural that your parents come first, Martha retorted defensively. Don't be absurd. I came here to support you after hearing about the unfair treatment Camila endured. But now it seems you're the one at fault. Don't hide behind her parents' authority to get your way, Liam said, making Mason visibly shrink in his seat. Liam then apologized to me and my parents. I'm truly sorry for the trouble caused by my foolish son. I will have a serious talk with him. Liam, you're not to blame at all, so please don't apologize, I replied. Thank you for your kind words, but there's something else I need to say, I added. I turned to Mason, who was now nervous. The divorce papers you gave me, I've already filed them. We're no longer married. Mason and Martha both turned pale. Why did you file them without my permission? Mason demanded, shocked. You told me I could file them whenever I wanted. Besides, you had already filled out your part and had Martha sign as a witness, I calmly explained. Mason was clearly at a loss for words. Seeing the tension, Liam, furious, intervened. Mason, you used divorce as a threat, he exclaimed, unable to contain his anger, and slapped Mason across the face. Martha, witnessing this, was visibly shaken. Liam turned to me and apologized sincerely. I apologize deeply that you had to witness this. You have every right to divorce this fool. On behalf of Mason, I'm truly sorry for the ruin brought upon your marriage, he said, his grip tightening on Mason's collar as he demanded apologies from both Mason and Martha before ushering them out of the house. Later, I thanked Liam for his intervention. He assured me that all of Mason's assets and property were transferred to me without any hassle. Given my higher income and the effort I had put into managing our household, it was a relief to secure everything from our marriage. Later, I learned that Liam, who was obviously repulsed by Martha's behavior, had filed for divorce. I met a coworker from Mason's previous job one day, and she revealed some startling information. Mason's supervisor had been giving him harsh criticism frequently since he wasn't doing a good job at his work. Mason's resignation and job change were acts of defiance that made me even more frustrated with him. He placed the blame for his failures on others rather than accepting responsibility, which probably led to his lesser salary in the new job. I'm glad I got away from him now. I'm enjoying living on my own after renting a cozy flat. My work is going well, and I recently got paid more. I would much rather concentrate on my profession at this time, and am not interested in relationships. Mason has always been more concerned with appearances than aptitude. At home, he kept up a front, but he never developed professionally. Unfortunately, a lot of spouses think they are powerful when they threaten to file for divorce, but this is a tremendous error. I pray they realize their foolishness and discover contentment on their own. I'm happy that I'm over Mason for the time being, and I'm looking forward to finding someone great when I'm ready. My name is Helen, and I turned 30 years old recently. Many years ago, I foolishly thought that my love could fix all of his problems. Therefore, I chose to marry a man who had a lot of problems. I believed I could make him see how valuable he is. But regrettably, love has its limitations and cannot make someone love themselves. I'm going to call my former spouse Scott. He was driven beyond the typical desire to make his parents proud and developed an extreme preoccupation with pleasing them. This obsessive demand for their acceptance dominated his entire life. I'll refer to Scott's parents as Mr. and Mrs. Kyle. Scott was more in need of their attention because they didn't seem to care about him. It hurt to watch, and I quickly realized that I was unable to make up for the emotional gap they left in him. To make matters worse, Scott would often spend our funds on lavish presents and trips for his parents, using up our money for things they almost ever utilized. Our relationship suffered greatly as a result of his careless spending, which turned into a constant subject of contention between us, and made me feel like I was competing with his parents for his attention. Even with all the problems and the never-ending arguments, I still harbored feelings for Scott. I clung to the notion that he would rise above the impractical standards his parents had set for him and discover true fulfillment in himself. It was painfully obvious that Scott's parents' bad influences could not be kept at bay by my love alone. One day, things became serious when Scott walked up to me and gave me a serious face, like he had something important to talk about. Considering the ups and downs of our relationship, I prepared myself for something extreme because I felt this discussion would lead to our most heated argument to date. "Helen, there's something important I need to talk about," he began with a grave tone. "What's going on?" I asked, my heart sinking in anticipation of bad news. "It's about my parents. They're retiring soon, and I want to surprise them with a luxury vacation. It's going to be quite expensive," he revealed, his face a mix of excitement and anxiety. "That sounds nice, as long as the money comes from your personal savings." "I really don't want to dip into our joint savings again," I responded, hoping to steer clear of another financial argument. "I don't have enough to cover it on my own." "I was hoping we could use some of our savings," Scott admitted, his expression torn between hope and concern. "Scott, if it's more than we can afford, maybe we should reconsider this expense," I suggested gently, trying to anchor him back to reality. However, my words only upset him. "You just don't understand, Helen. I love my parents and want to do something special for them. Love isn't about counting every penny. It's about grand gestures," he argued with passion. I countered, but love is also about being there for each other and making sacrifices together, not at the expense of our financial stability. This trip might be important to them, but we need to think about our future too. Scott remained adamant. "I have to do this for them. I thought you of all people would understand. They're everything to me," he implored. "And you're everything to me, Scott, but we have to be practical. We can't just use all our savings on one trip," I reasoned, searching for a middle ground. Instead, he accused me of being selfish and not seeing the importance of his gesture. "It's not about being selfish. It's about being sensible and planning for our future," I explained, my anxiety growing as he mentioned he needed all of our savings. "All of our savings, Scott? That's just reckless," I exclaimed, stunned by his request. "You're being heartless," he shot back, convinced I couldn't grasp his desire to make his parents happy. "No, Scott, I'm being realistic," I replied, feeling the chasm between us widen with each word. "We can't afford to spend $35,000 on a whim." His nonchalant assumption that we could simply get the money back later only deepened my irritation. "Really, Scott? That's not how this works," I replied, my disbelief palpable. We were deadlocked, and our perspectives on love, responsibility, and finances were poles apart. The argument escalated, voices raised, and in the heated moment, items were hurled and shattered, our frustration manifesting physically. Amidst the turmoil, Scott dropped a bombshell, declaring that if I couldn't support him, he wanted a divorce. He likely expected me to react with panic, desperate to salvage our marriage. Instead, I summoned all my calm and resolve, and simply said, "Okay, Scott, if that's truly what you want." The shock was evident on his face. He had anticipated tears and pleas, but instead, he met my unwavering stance. I was done catering to his fantasies. If he chose to squander his future on unattainable dreams, he would do so alone. I held nothing back, expressing my thoughts clearly. His ceaseless pursuit of his parents' approval was futile, like trying to stay dry in a storm with just an umbrella. He attempted to counter, but I silenced him with a simple raise of my hand, declaring my refusal to continue fighting for a love hindered by unrealistic expectations and an incessant need for validation. Go ahead, spend all your money trying to win over people who barely notice you. I told him, resolute in my decision to end the cycle of disappointments and broken promises. With that, the stark reality struck him. Our marriage had morphed into a battlefield, and it was time to surrender and seek peace separately. A month has passed since our divorce was finalized, and I must say the sense of liberation is profound. Gone are the exhausting arguments over finances and the futile quest for approval that was never ours to claim. Now I breathe easier, freed from the oppressive weight of his insecurities that once clouded my days. Each new day now shines a bit brighter. True, Scott has attempted to re-enter my life, feigning concern and inquiring about my well-being, but I see through his charade. I'm not about to be deceived again. As the old saying goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I resolutely turned away from Scott's attempts to rekindle our past relationship. I had come to understand that I invested too much in trying to mend someone who had no desire to change. It was now time to prioritize my personal growth and happiness. Rebuilding my life wasn't easy, to say the least. Splitting our shared assets and adapting to a new financial reality required patience and resilience. Although I was accustomed to a certain lifestyle, I was no stranger to adaptation and welcomed the challenge to reshape my life. As I embarked on this journey of self-discovery, I uncovered a strength and independence I never knew I possessed. Reconnecting with old friends, resuming hobbies I had put aside, and exploring new interests opened up a world brimming with possibilities. I was determined to seize this fresh start. Yes, there were moments filled with self-doubt and loneliness, and adjusting to a tighter budget was tough. The scars from a failed marriage don't vanish overnight. But with each day, I found solace in knowing that I was no longer compromising my happiness to cater to someone else's insecurities. The relative ease with which I moved forward was perhaps indicative of how long I had clung to a relationship that was doomed. It was astonishing to see how much I could achieve once I was liberated from that emotional burden. A month into this new chapter, I was still adjusting but feeling more empowered than ever. Amidst this transformation, Scott's messages took on a new tone. He claimed he was in danger and urgently needed to meet. Weary of his relentless attempts to reach out, I decided it was time to address the situation head-on. Amid his ongoing pleas, I called him. "Scott, we've been over this. We're divorced. It's time for us to move on," I said with firmness. "Helen, please, I just need a moment to explain. I'm in serious trouble, and you're the only one I can turn to for help," he implored, his voice perhaps carrying a genuine tone of fear. Or maybe it was just the absence of hearing his voice that made it seem so. Whether it was the long silence since our last heartfelt conversation, or his seemingly sincere distress. A part of me was intrigued yet cautious about his intentions. Despite my reservations, I agreed to meet Scott. Fine, but we're not meeting at my place. Let's go to that cafe we used to frequent. No tricks, understood. I stipulated. Thank you, Helen. I promise I just need someone to listen. You're the only one who understands me, he replied, sounding genuinely relieved. You might be wondering why I would agree to meet Scott after everything that happened. Truthfully, I questioned my own decision. Yet sometimes, curiosity and a lingering concern, no matter how faint, compel us to act against our better judgment. I couldn't completely dismiss his plea. Divorced or not, I couldn't deny that part of me still cared. So there we were, sitting across from each other in the cozy cafe, enveloped in the comforting aroma of coffee. However, not even the familiar soothing environment could ease the tension. Watching Scott with anxiety etched across his face, and those deliberately sad eyes trying to tug at my heartstrings, was almost comical. This time, though, I remained unmoved. I leaned back, composed and in control, prepared to listen but determined to keep the conversation on my terms. Okay, Scott, you have my attention for now. What's this danger you're supposedly in? Just so you know, I'm not here to save you. I'm done cleaning up your messes, I stated, my tone firm yet open to hearing him out. Scott sighed deeply, his face a blend of regret and desperation that was almost pitiable. But I steeled myself against any emotional manipulation. I know I've made mistakes before, Helen, but this situation is different. I've gotten involved with some seriously bad people. I owe them a lot of money, and they're not known for their patience, he confessed. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical of his melodramatic tale. Really, Scott? Dangerous people? Are we revisiting the tale of your imaginary friends who seem to attract trouble? I couldn't hide my disbelief. Scott's expression shifted to one of hurt and frustration, evidently hoping for a more sympathetic response. No, Helen, this isn't made up. I'm in deep trouble, and coming to you is my last resort, he insisted, his voice tinged with desperation. Let me guess, you spiraled after our divorce. I continued, piecing together the predictable pattern of his post-separation choices. As Scott shared his predicament, my voice unintentionally rose, attracting the attention of other cafe patrons. I shot them an apologetic look, trying to regain my composure. Look, I got caught up in something foolish, I admit, but now I'm in a mess that's bigger than I can handle alone, Scott confessed, his eyes filled with a desperate plea. My frustration was close to boiling over. How could he just waltz back into my life with yet another crisis? Yet beneath my irritation, a faint shadow of empathy lingered. How much are you in for? I asked, bracing myself for the answer. $120,000, Scott responded sheepishly. $120,000, Scott. Are you out of your mind? My outburst was louder this time, drawing sharp glances from around the cafe. I didn't bother with an apology. Anyone overhearing our conversation would likely understand my reaction. Helen, please, I'm begging you. I've got nowhere else to turn. I know I've made a mess of things, but you're the one person who really believed in me, Scott pleaded, his eyes glistening with a sincerity that momentarily reminded me of the man I once loved. But those days were long gone, and my priority now was self-preservation, even if it meant walking away from him. Don't pull at my heartstrings, Scott. It's way too late for that. When you said you needed help, I thought you meant maybe $20,000, not $120,000. You've completely lost it, I responded, my voice a mix of disbelief and indignation. Overwhelmed, Scott began to cry, seemingly oblivious to the uncomfortable glances from other patrons. Scott, calm down. "This isn't the place for a scene," I said firmly. "What's going to happen if you don't pay this back?" "They're threatening to harm me, Helen. I'm not joking. This is really bad," he managed between sobs. His words hung heavy in the air, leaving me torn between my lingering concern for his well-being and the need to protect myself from being dragged back into his chaos. Seeing the seriousness of his situation, I was forced to consider the gravity of the risk he faced. I softened my approach. "All right, Scott, start from the beginning and tell me everything," I urged gently. He then recounted his attempts to fund an extravagant trip for his parents. He had borrowed money, trusting a friend who ultimately let him down, plunging him deep into debt. As he narrated his missteps, I felt a mix of frustration at his reckless decisions and a reluctant amusement at the outcome. "So you borrowed money from risky people to impress your parents, who hadn't even noticed your efforts? Is that what happened?" I asked, seeking clarity on the sequence of events. Scott's expression fell, and tears streamed down his face as he faced the painful truth. "Yes. Ever since they went on that trip, it's like I don't matter to them," he confessed, his voice laden with regret. Even though I was irritated, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for him. It was a harsh lesson for Scott, and seeing him so remorseful stirred a compassionate response within me. "You've really gotten yourself into a tough spot," I remarked. "Scott, I know you don't want to hear 'I told you so,' but you did create this mess yourself. I warned you it wasn't a good idea, and now, after choosing to leave me over it, here you are struggling. You invested everything in trying to make your parents happy, but all you received in return was their indifference. It's a hard lesson, but it's one you needed to learn," I explained, feeling a mix of concern and resignation. This was a bitter truth for both of us. Scott had pegged his self-worth on people who couldn't appreciate his sacrifices, and I had to come to terms with the fact that I couldn't shield him from his own decisions. I hoped that confronting these tough consequences would help him realize that I had always been on his side, but his relentless quest for parental approval was his undoing. As we sat in silence, the weight of our shared past, filled with broken promises and unrealized dreams, was palpable. I realized it was time to completely let go. No more second chances, no more attempts to mend what was beyond repair. Scott needed to confront the outcomes of his actions on his own, and I needed to move forward and find my path to happiness. "I hope you find a way out of this, Scott," I said, my voice carrying a firm tone of finality. "You're not going to help?" Scott asked, looking genuinely surprised. "No, I'm not," I replied. "Why not?" he pressed. "Because I don't have the money to bail you out. And even if I did, taking on a huge loan that I'd be paying off for years isn't something I can afford." "I can't afford to be as reckless as you've been," I explained, my tone steady and unwavering. "Come on, Helen, please. I'm begging you," he pleaded, his desperation palpable. "Scott, expecting me to fix this for you, especially given how you're acting, isn't realistic," I said, feeling my patience thinning. "Yeah, I did expect that. You're my ex-wife, not my enemy," he replied, still clinging to a shred of hope. But it was clear our lives had taken different paths. My focus now was on securing my peace and happiness, separate from the chaos that once intertwined our lives. "And that's the problem, Scott. You expect me to always be there to clean up your mess because that's what I used to do. I was your wife, so helping you out of trouble was something I did naturally. But I can't and shouldn't keep doing that. It's not my responsibility anymore," I continued. "After everything, I don't owe you anything, especially considering how our money was wasted on your ungrateful and toxic parents." "But I love them," Scott said, his voice softening. "And I love myself too. Loving myself means doing what's best for me, including taking care of my well-being, I countered. Scott cast a downward glance as he realized he wouldn't be getting the assistance he desired from me. I knew how desperate he was, so I gave him one final bit of advice. As it appears that you have no other options, I would advise you to leave. Go to a remote location where they can't find you. With a steady yet determined tone, I turned to face Scott and stated, "I'm not sure what more you're asking of me." He sat silently, obviously disappointed that I had turned down his request for assistance this time. "Scott, it's time for us to go down different roads." I tried explaining, hoping he would understand the seriousness of what I was saying. "I can no longer allow myself to be enmeshed in your troubles. Each of us must seek out our own peace." There was a trace of bitterness in his remark. "If you truly cared, you would assist," he said in an irate tone. "I'm going to say goodbye, Scott." I stood up and walked away, adamantly declaring, "I'm also changing my phone number." I left him sitting there by himself, a confusing mix of emotions on his face. I had to make a difficult but necessary decision for my happiness and dignity.